reminds me for that. Thanks, Sachinji, in advance. Okay.
No problem.
Sure. It's really, see, we work together. We are basically getting ourselves ready for a job, and we should get the top bucks in the industry. That's what the target is. So putting all ego aside, what we do, we start with the research, and it's a continuous activity. We do research, like what are something like Edureka is teaching, what are something like the other guys who are basically building these things. Even we are basically partner with PMI, IIB, and all those institutes, because they do release some certain email for any new process, any new templates they are building, like Scaled Agile. Scaled Agile is still evolving, right? They're trying to basically getting adopted to the agility to the longer project, because we will learn that how Scaled Agile is basically getting implemented or improved, right? And those scenarios. So for that, we do these research with different trainings. The links are given there just to understand you, like forget about the counterpart and the ego part of it. Trying to understand what these guys are training also, and these are basically the latest link from YouTube, and these are free course, of course. So whenever you get a time, you had a time, and you want to refresh something, rather than just hearing my voice or my training, you can go to those links.
Got it. Yeah, we can choose from the different institute as well. That's what you want us to do.
But
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, subscribe means subscribe is okay, but don't pay out of your pocket. You can ask me questions, whatever they're explaining also. So even
that's nice of you. That's a good effort from your side.
Right, and there could be a scenario like I don't know. I might do a bit of research. I might check with a couple of my oldies and all, and then we'll try to discuss it out. And that's the model we are building in learning these new technologies, new tracks, and new improvements in all these 4 capsules. And that's how we normally do it. Okay.
There are got it. Appreciate you.
No problem. See, we have to learn together, right? And that's the model. Rather than,
I get that.
Keep building our ego, or keep building our I am the greatest mentor of the, or I am the greatest participant of the world. No, it doesn't work like that. We have to get acquire top bucks, whatever available in the market, as and when we are got ready, and we are getting ready. And that's why I normally even request you to join those, resume preparatory session also, because Devji gives you really good guidance. He normally, coordinate with all client engagement managers and everything. So he's basically kind of market facing. I'm normally technology facing. So I can, you can think like I mostly do the training, research, training advancement, whatever we can get. I normally try to incorporate in our training. But he actually market facing, so he can give you the actual current scenario, like what market is looking for. When you talk about SAFe, what are the questions these guys are asking? So he also keeps updating this Excel sheet. Most of the things actually he have collected there. I have very few what you can say contribution to the Excel sheet, what you were saying, but still we do these things together, and that's why I think please be a part of those resume preparation session, vendor interview, client interview practice. Even I normally try to be bend the training towards that end, rather than just collecting bookish knowledge. But yes, bookish knowledge is also necessary, means we should be able to use those words in our day-to-day life, right? Then only the other will understand, like, okay, you've done this thing, you've done that thing. So that's how we try to represent those things. Okay.
Okay, and coming to the second sheet, I think that has a YouTube videos day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. Right. And the sheet 3, again I see a Google Meet link. So is there a difference between sheet 2 and sheet 3, because I'm yet to go through them?
I think they are named accordingly, ma'am. Means if you're talking about Zoom Recs, those are the sheets which I normally update after each and every session. Like if today's session, whenever Zoom processes those recording an hour and a half, I normally put those recording
in the Zoom meeting one.
So Zoom Recs is the most important as of you right now. The other sheets, I think they have the
YouTube day 1, day 2, day 3. You want us to go through them?
We have a legal team which basically analyzes these trainings. Whatever I say, I might use some word which is a copyrighted to anybody else, right? So they try to remove such copyright cliches and get them released for public, for YouTube, so that all the marketing team and everything, they can share those YouTube video from there. So they also use these link sheet. It's a kind of central repository, as we see. We try to create this knowledge, and we collect this knowledge at this Excel sheet. So you can understand how we normally create knowledge, right? And it's common for everybody.
Okay, so we can focus more on the Zoom link rather than the YouTube one.
Right.
Okay.
YouTube link, even, I'll put it in a group whenever the YouTube link is released, because they guide me, and we normally use for marketing purpose. So if anybody wants any particular thing, see, Zoom recording, you can't, I believe you can't view on all mobiles. Okay, because it has certain restrictions for the picture format or audio format or something like that sort. So we normally try to release it for YouTube, because then it's compatible for all the mobiles in the world, all the tablets in the world. And you can have those site fitments and everything as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Yeah, this is the process, no problem. And that's why I share it, because rather than sending message every day, this is more kind of adoption to the latest technology, the way we feel it. Okay, sure.
Okay.
Let's get
Thanks,
started.
Ravi.
No problem. Most welcome. And please have a have you gone through the audio link of the chapter 4?
Yeah,
Anybody?
I started, but I haven't completed. I just started the first audio. I was able to download, and I could hear it.
Okay,
And the
great.
second one, it had some error, and I kind of failed to download it. So probably I should try again.
Audio file, I should have given you only one, ma'am. There
were
are
two.
10, I think 11 audio files. I'm not sure. Let me check. Well, there are total 11 audio files there in the Google Drive. That's my personal Google Drive, Ravindra Pandey. And I have converted those PDF to audios, because there are quite a few, such tools available online. You can do it on yourself as well. It reads the PDF for you with the, robotic.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you can listen to these thing while driving car, or,
Yeah,
whenever
exactly.
I should have certain different thing, or, in a mood of learning kind of stuff. So you can do that while doing your work as well. So that does help you out. So that's why we normally did this thing around, I think, 3 sessions before. And this is how we normally, basically helping out to learn, right? Helping out to understand all these, new technology, new words, and so on. So, okay. Sure. Let's start today. Yes. So we have started with the first knowledge area, project integration management. I'll repeat, this is again an umbrella activity where as far as project management, building those documents, template, or setting up the tools and technologies, we are trying to create an umbrella activity whenever we start a project, and it continues throughout the project management till release, support. We also create quite a few help manuals via this integrated project management plan as well, right? There are 7 process groups in knowledge area. The first knowledge area, project integration management. There are normally categorized in 5 process group. First, initiating process group, planning process group, executing process group, monitoring and controlling process group, and closing process group. As the name indicates, initiating process group is normally executed whenever the project is getting initiated. Planning process group runs as a parallel activity throughout the project, solution services. Same thing with the executing process group. And monitoring and control group is where the actual actions happens, where we normally monitor and control the overall flow of project construction, product construction, services, support, and all those things. And of course, the closing process group is basically to decide when to close the project, what are the factors we should keep track of, in terms of, in case if you are overboarding the profit lines, if you are really damaging the overall intention of or objectives of the project we have initiated with. So these kind of scenarios. So here we basically try to mix and match with the industry standard processes via this process group. And the way we are studying, there's an input, we do process, and then there's the output. So we are trying to learn all these process group in these 3 entities, so that we can understand what type of documents we include whenever we start this, understanding process group. Whatever we do, in terms of whatever we do to those documents, where are all these, tools we use? We might use Excel sheet, Microsoft Project Plan, Jira, We might use MOM templates and all those things. So there are inputs which are getting churned out in tools and techniques. We might use certain, techniques like discussions, interviewing, and all those things as well. And then we create output. This is how we are studying this knowledge area. And there are total 10 knowledge area as far as PMI standard, which industry have been accepted, right? And you get normally certified on this knowledge of 10 knowledge area with practical examples, implementation, and some actual hands-on question as well. So we're going to do these things step by step, right? We have already discussed develop project charter, develop project management plan, direct and manage project work, manage project knowledge, monitor and control project work, and perform integrated change control. Okay, today we're going to have a detailed look at closed project group. Just to revise step by step, in develop project charter, we normally develop a project charter and assumption log from all the business documents which are supplied, given to us by the clients. We build a business case, we build a benefit management plan in terms of resources, in terms of revenues and everything. We try to incorporate all the agreements we did for this project, and we try to churn out the enterprise environmental factor and organizational process assets. We normally use expert judgment whenever there's a need. We try to gather additional details if there's a need, but normally it's a business analyst team responsibility of data gathering. They do brainstorming, they do focus group, they do interview. In case if the project manager feels the need, he can also use this technique to gather extra data or any gap if he finds the details need to be collected. Then we also want to understand or also want to clarify that there are certain interpersonal and team skills needed as in personality of a project manager. So we should be able to manage conflict. We should be able to facilitate to the team members as we are leading to the team. And we also do meeting management and plan out the meetings which are required by policies and procedure, whatever, including project management methodologies we have adopted for that product, services, and support. As we discussed, the output is project charter, which is normally a Word document or Excel sheet, and we have assumption logs included in this project charter. As we already told, project charter also be referred as a project familiarization document, so that if any team member joins you in between, you normally hand over this project charter or project familiarization document to the member, and he will go through it and he'll understand the project objective, the basically driving factor of the project, the tools and techniques we are using, the project methodology we are going to use, and so on and so forth. Where to look for in terms of cloud storage, what type of credentials do we need to get started, and all those things. So all these things are normally included in the project charter. Project charter is a normally document which can be distributed between the project stakeholders. So we normally, if anybody asks, we share the project charter to give them an idea of a project. So these basically have the all necessities needed to understand how the project have been initiated, including the environment is going to get executed if it's in the initial phase, how it's going to, how is basically when it started, and what type of methodology, templates, quality framework you're using to execute that product building, project construction. It's all mentioned there. Okay, anybody have any question in project charter?
No.
Okay, great. Let's take a step further. Develop project management plan. This is the first project management plan. If you are at an initial stage, start building. We include project charter in this, and then the output from other processes. If you are in between the means at a construction phase or a design phase or a testing phase or a release phase, all these other phases, if you are there, or even warranty and support phase, you try to include other documents to update this project management plan. This is an umbrella project management plan. Otherwise, we have total 9 other project management plans, like scope management plan, schedule management plan, and so on and so forth. And we're going to have a look at those as well. Okay, these are standard Word documents which we create to understand how we are going to execute, construct, support, warranty these product, project, solution, services. And these are all things included in this project management plan. in this project management plan, there are specificity of whatever type of project management methodologies you're going to use. Normally, 95% above everybody use Agile Scrum, and some of the adaptability to the Agile scaled methodology is also started for a longer duration project or a bigger project, which normally bigger in the sense more than a year's lifespan or more than a year of development span, construction span, which we are thinking of. So those kind of bigger projects have scaled agile. We're going to have a look at this scaled agile as well. We're going to look at Agile Scrum as well. Okay. So all these things are mentioned in Agile Scrum. We do iterative development. We keep developing in something called sprint. This sprint can be anything between 3 days to 2 weeks. So minimum 3 days is a sprint, or maximum 2 weeks is one sprint. Now this one sprint is basically a cycle where you collect requirement, you build the priority requirement list, you start planning this requirement to be constructed, to be developed, and then you have this one iteration. That's what we call sprint. Okay, here we froze the requirement in terms of for that sprint period. So even if we are flexible in nature, we try to do it in a frozen way, or we try to use it in a waterfall type of model where we have collected requirement, we have prioritized the requirement, and we start constructing them. And side by side, there's a quality control testing going on, and then we release it after this sprint. So there can be very small part of product, small part of software code, small part of support services have been released to the client. Even in support services, we have certain tickets logged against the software or against any services you are providing. Let's say you're in a restaurant industry, right? So you collect these, complaints, updates, requests, and all those things. Let's say if you have a 1 week sprint. So what I'll do, let's say on Sunday, we normally close down the establishment. So I'll open that suggestion box, collect those suggestion requirement, try to prioritize in terms of viable, non-viable, can be applicable in the next week, and so on and so forth. So can be updated and applicable in the next week is my basically what I can say product backlog, or what I normally refer it as the selected requirement to be constructed, applied, enhanced, or developed within the sprint time. And that's what I do throughout the week's time. And after a week's time, I normally roll out whatever new policies, procedures, updates, constructions, really whichever I created throughout the week, I release it to the customer. And that way I keep enhancing my services. So I'll make sure my restaurant is getting bigger and better day by day. And this is how I adopt to the iterative life cycle of Agile. We're going to study Agile in detail. There's a specific capsule on Agile before we go into the scaled Agile methodology. So we're going to study all these things in detail. Please don't worry about that. I'm just sharing this introduction with you because this project integration management plan have all these details included there, right? In terms of how long is your sprint, what type of documents are you included in this current sprint, how you have collected that backlog. And there's a normal ceremony called sprint meet or a scrum meet. Not sprint meet, scrum meet. We normally have daily scrum meet. This is a meeting which have we do on every day to make sure whatever we worked yesterday has been rolled out or phased out to the next team. Like if you're developing any software code which is released to the test so that they can test with their test cases available. If you're constructing something like a pen or a cap or something, daily stand-up meeting. That's very right, Sita. Daily stand-up meeting is the right nomenclature for that meeting. The length of the team is maximum 15 minutes and it's strictly followed. It's what we call standing meeting because you couldn't stand more than 15 minutes. That's a normal, human things. Well, there are extraordinary humans who can stand for 6 and 7 hours. We are talking about typical IT guys, right? which normally don't stand more than 15 minutes. And yeah, that's all itself is an exercise for every IT guys. Okay. Other than that, these meetings are made for scrutinizing the backlog, scrutinizing the pending items, which we can include today. In case if somebody's efficiency gone up in multi-folds, we might include more items. In case if somebody's efficiency gone down due to families, leaves, holidays, situational challenges, environmental challenges, or many other scenario, we try to adjust this backlog accordingly, and we'll basically try to build a day's plan on daily scrum meeting, get it executed, whatever output in the next daily scrum meet, we'll push that output to the next phase, and then start building another priority log, so that we can construct support or do those things within that day. So this is how the daily scrum meet make sure you're totally aligned with the current scenario. You even include certain things if client says, okay, it's a really good meet, and I'm going to pay top dollar for these. So you might include those things, and you might backlog your current high priority item, and these things do happen in a practical life. Theoretically, we shouldn't, because every request should go to the change through the change control board. So if change control approves it, which might take a day or two, and then it comes to the project management team. In Scrum stand-up meeting, we normally invite the product owner. Now, product owner is a visionary guy who basically envision this plan, envision this project. So he knows the project objective to its crux. So whenever a VP HR from a State Farm joins the meeting in terms of how to enhance their attendance management system, he has started that thought first. So he has all the basic nitty-gritties, basic understanding of how you are basically compiling to a level where all these other priorities are in align with the basic business objectives, and everything else is secondary, right? So those kind of guidance you can leverage in daily stand-up meeting. Practically, product owners are very senior people. They do travel across the world and blah, blah, blah things. So normally we have product, owners joining this meet sparingly, not daily, but at least once a week or something like that. Or he nominates somebody from his team saying this HR manager is going to join this as a product owner, and we normally go ahead with that. We normally start living with that, start accepting he or she as a product owner, and we utilize his vision, mission to apply to the complete project management plan, and try to understand our scenario, priority, conflicts, and all those things. This is how the agile processes get executed. We do have a hands-on workshop on such project planning, and even we do a stand-up scrum meeting. We'll do it at the end of this project knowledge area training capsules. Before that, we should be able to plan our project. That's the most basic crux. So whenever you start working as a manager, you first create a document called project plan. And this project plan is what we're talking about here, which normally includes a Microsoft project sheet or Microsoft project plan, MPP, it's normally referred. So we should be able to understand whenever the interviewer asks, so what type of MPP have you built? Type in the sense, what type of project management methodologies have you applied? So when he asks about type of MPP, he's normally asking about the project management methodology like waterfall, agile, scrum, safe, COCOMO, and so on and so forth. There are over 25 such project management methodology we can choose from. Depending upon your domain, products, support, services, we choose these things. There are services which are normally famous in a region. Like if you go to European market, they normally use ITISM. They use Six Sigma. If you go to East Asian countries, they normally have they'll normally have their own favorite set of technologies they were using. Like if you go to Japan and all, they have their TQM, total quality management. They have certain their methodology evolved at their end. In North America, we normally use all standardized methodologies like Agile Scrum, as I told you. So wherever in Canada, North America, and all the other nearby matured countries, where we normally go with Agile Scrum. And now we are moving to the scaled agile, wherever the projects are more than a year length. Okay, so this is how this project management plan is being built. So we have all these, project charter, output from other processes, enterprise environmental factor, and organizational process assets. Who want to explain me what is enterprise environmental factors? What are enterprise? Yeah, please go ahead.
Enterprise environmental factors are factors which are beyond the control of the team, the project team, which can be which can be outside the organization, or which could be internal but outside the purview of the team, which is affecting the performance or the activities which is carried out by the project team.
Great, great. You explain it too well, true to the actual practical scenario. But whenever you explaining this thing, you normally try to eliminate the negative point of it. So whenever you are trying to say outside the team's purview, let's not use that statement. Just say all the factors which basically helps team to make sure you do the things effectively. This is kind of looking at a positive factor, because yes, actually, if you look at the management is basically everything to control the unimaginable, or what you can say, not so routine things, right? That's why we normally have management in place. That's where, but there are negative and positive both sides. As you said, things which team can't control will eliminate this part of the statement. What will go? The entities, the policies and procedure which are set up by the organization for the teams working within, to make sure they can do their work effectively. This is the most positive explanation of enterprise environmental factor. Having said that, you are correct to the word. Please don't take it otherwise.
No,
I'm just trying to help you out, because whenever you go to a negativity of things, there are certain questions who comes into the human mind, and we tend to be negative in real life, believe me. And there are lots of negativity. As a manager, if you want to be happy, if you want to be successful, please try to eliminate such statement. And it's a humble request. Please don't take it personally. This is again, whenever we basically try to explain, see, glass is always half full. You either, say, my glass is half empty, or my glass is half full. Yeah, it's not filled till brim, but yeah, it's good. Means, I can live with that right now. Something like that sort. And every organizations, they have their own challenges. They have their own, way of working. There are, older managers who set up some really foolish processes. These things do happen. Whenever you go, you will find these things. But let's look at it positively. Let's try to implement the processes which gives you, a really good feeling, and you can control your project. That's as simple as that. That's the, crux of the matter at the end of the day. And that's how we put it, right? Okay, thanks. It's really great explanation. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Anybody want to explain how organizational process assets are? Sorry, what are organizational processes assets? Okay, let me explain again. Enterprise is inward to the organization. Organizational process assets are outward to the organization. So whatever governmental, state regulation, federal regulation, the environmental factor, okay, these factors which affect your project are organizational process assets. The simple example, a new legislation enactment. You can't have, biometric use in your attendance management system. It's, a law made by your state, and yeah, you need to follow it. You don't have choice.
So that is EF, right? That's enterprise environmental factors, what you're saying right now.
No, ma'am, this is a state regulation, right? So it's outside environmental purview.
Okay. Organizational
process. I think yes. Even I keep mixing up these two things. Enterprise environmental factor, which are environmental to the enterprise, which are outside environment. Organizational process asset is the asset which organizational built for themselves, like the policies and procedures, right? Sorry. The first answer should be for organizational process asset. Even I skip, mixing these two, and this is my problem. Pardon me for that. So enterprise environmental factor are all the environmental factors affecting the enterprise, which is outside your enterprise. So if you working with a startup and a state comes up with a new regulation, all startup has to pay $50 a month as an extra charge for all the documentation support they need from state government, or yes, state government, something like that. So we need to pay those $50 per month, right? Depend on such regulations, our enterprise try to cope up with all the regulation environment like snowstorm, environment like COVID remote working regulation for state. Even in North America, currently, there are 3 states who are allowed daily working with 75% of capacities. Now, these are again enterprise environmental factor and state laws affecting you. On federally, they say no, you can work up to 50% of shield capacity, and you have to call them on periodic basis rather than having coming everybody at a single day in office. So they have to rotate these attendance in a office, and that's how they are implementing at a federal level. But at a state level, you have certain states which are allowing offices to open to 75% of the capacity. Are they in contradiction with each other? In some way, some might say yes, but we are not legal experts. So let's not step down or try to understand their capacity, their authorization, authentication, and all those things. Let's try to stick it to our project management plan, where we try to adopt to this scenario to use these things to make sure our project runs efficiently as much as is allowed by the situations. Okay. Anybody have any confusion in enterprise environmental factor and organizational process assets?
No.
Okay, great. Everybody else, please try to explain in your own words. Whatever words you use and whatever word we speak is our normal, adoption to the given scenario. So unless and until you are adopting this thought process of project management, it's difficult to clear the interview. We have to use these words, like enterprise environmental factor, organizational process assets. There could be errors even in interview. They might ask you something and you might answer something else. These things do happen. Don't get bogged down by that. Don't really struggle with whatever wrong answer you given. Whenever you give the answer, think it as if you are given in that spur of a moment, and let's move on rather than keep thinking like I have spoiled the interview, or the interview might not be up to the mark, and blah 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 things. Okay, so please try to move on as swiftly as you can, as fast as you can, right? So this is a project management plan which is getting created as an umbrella project activity, and this is in our initiating type of process group. So this is basically, we start with this project plan and we keep updating throughout the life of a product, project, solution, support, even in a warranty phase as well, right? Anybody have any question in this develop project plan?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Direct and manage project work. Direct and manage project work, as we can refer to this slide number 27, is in the executing process group. Okay, this was in a planning process group, develop project management plan. So the planning starts with this first develop project management plan, and then executing process group, we have direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge, right? These two things. Let's try to understand. Direct and manage project work, we try to create initial activities and tasks to be done by the resources which we have got allocated for this project development, construction, support, what type of activity you are doing. So here we try to basically build a basic list of, or review the list of activities, tasks to be done by the team members, right? And that's what is all about direct and manage project work, right? So first we try to understand, if you look at the output, the deliverables. So what we need to deliver, what we need to deliver in current sprint, that what we'll basically have here. What type of work performance data we had previously, could we improve it? We'll have a look at these things. What type of issue logs I'm getting if I'm in a warranty phase or a support phase? I'll try to understand those issue logs or the problems logged by the customers. Might be in a user acceptance phase or might be in a actual product release phase. those kind of issue logs I'll study and I'll try to support them with released or updated issues. Then change request. If any particular change request can, if you have, even if you have a product, like even if you look at Microsoft Windows, right? Microsoft Windows 10, you still get product update request. So there's a guy from Pakistan raising an issue. The Urdu word is not correctly spelled in Windows because we have Windows Urdu as a language. And these type of requests keep coming to the Microsoft on almost daily basis. And these things do happen. Even we have, Windows in Hindi, if you've heard of that. We have Windows in, Japanese, Korean, Chinese also. Chinese Windows is one of the most difficult Windows Microsoft normally have. They have a big team of Chinese, linguistic expert at Seattle who keep updating these things because Chinese language is evolving language. And they have this pictorial representation rather than a combination of letters for a word. And that's again at a different level, quite challenging. So they have these change requests. You have these change requests even in a warranty phase of a product, even in a support phase of product. So these things do happen to you. Then we have project management plan update, any components. In the sense, if you thought about any new risk, the efficiency decreased due to COVID or efficiency decreased due to some of the members coming to office to work, some of the members, they are working from home and so on and so forth. So these type of miscommunication, lack of communications reduces the efficiency of a team members. So how to cope up those things? I might devise a word or I might basically uniform team communication on Google Meet. So these policy updates I normally will include in my project management plan. Project document updates, activity list. So what type of activities we have to do in this today? Do you have to, call this guy and explain him how the Chinese window or the Urdu windows have to be updated, or I have to type an email as a reply to his challenge in Urdu spelling error he is getting on his PC or something like that sort, or do you have to release a patch for all Pakistani linguistics users? So yes, I can do that, and then the problem will be solved, something like that. So all these type of activity planning, we normally do it through the Scrum Meet. And the Scrum Meet, so all direct and project managed work, so project plan is getting updated on daily Scrum Meet. And that's why project manager is in an advisory capacity in Scrum Meet. Let me repeat, project manager is normally as an advisory capacity in a Scrum Meet. Scrum Master is the leader of the team or a chairman of a team or secretary of a team, whatever you want to call, and product owner is a guidance point. The project manager is in advisory capacity of a Scrum Meet, but he is the owner of the artifacts. So he has the project management plan owned by him. The artifact called project management plan owned by the project manager. So whatever updates we have scrolled up as far as daily backlog list or daily priority items, which normally goes to the project management plan, the integration project management plan, which is being updated by the project manager then and there. So the Scrum Meet outputs, whatever minutes of meeting Scrum Master is going to prepare, reflect all such items, all such entity, which basically validated by the project manager and product owner then and there. So we do update our project management plan on daily basis in even Scrum executions or the sprint executions, right, on a daily basis. Then we have assumption log. If any new assumption comes up, we will add the assumption. We also analyze the risk in terms of if this assumption can lead us to a risk. If yes, then add a risk there in a risk register as well. Then lessons learned register. Any good thing, any bad thing which we have incurred, which we have understood, which got to our notice, we try to resolve those things also, and we try to basically have these lessons learned move to the knowledge base which we have created for a project, which can be as simple as an Excel sheet or a Word document on a shared cloud available to all the project stakeholders, right? And it's renamed as a knowledge base normally. So it's a knowledge base .doc or knowledge base .xls with a date to it. So I normally update it as per the sprint, as per the project, product name, whatever, whatnot. So this again depend on the organizational policies and procedures, how they want to update their knowledge base, how frequently they want to update their knowledge base. Then we have requirement documentation. So if any new requirement by the stakeholders, by the client, I try to add it, not by myself, but this goes to the change control board, and change control board normally takes care of the new requirement and try to analyze if it's viable, if it's in line with the core project objectives, if client is ready to pay and all those things. So those kind of all scenario have been analyzed by the change control board and the financial consultant. That's not the project manager's purview, but even here also project managers act in an advisory capacity. Here there's no role of a scrum master in terms of requirement documentation or in terms of updating requirement. He is the advisory capacity in terms of requirements gathering. The normal main role of requirement documentation is business analyst. That's why business analysts work in advisory capacity for the Scrum Meet also. Most of the time, the business analysts have been migrated to the Scrum Master role in most of the company nowadays. So if you look at the new job roles, business analyst comes Scrum Master. That's the normal job description we get in our Dice Monster and all those job portals, right? And then we have risk register. So all assumptions can lead to a risk normally, and that's how we have risk register updates in direct and managed project work. And then stakeholder register. If there's a new stakeholder joining, so there's a new HR manager at State Farm who is going to get appointed as a lead for this new attendance management system. So I need to understand his expectation, understand and make sure he'll understand the current stage of project, current stage of solution development, and he can we can get his inputs as well. And that's how we keep updating our stakeholder register in terms of new joining, in terms of responsibility change, in terms of any new authority, approval authority joining our team. And then of course we do update organizational process assets. So organizational process assets are policies, rules, and framework which you use to efficient your build some efficiency into your product development, project development, solution development, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense? Anybody have any challenge in understanding direct and managed project work? I'm repeating these things because we need to understand it to crux, and you should be able to explain this thing in your word. So whenever I request you to explain in your word, please do so, because they'll make sure you don't have to really repeat these things on your own, and we can do a kind of group study. That's what we are doing, right? And that's how I normally try to leverage these things, whatever I'm discussing or whatever I'm reviewing also. Manage project knowledge work. This is also in combination with CMMI framework, what we can say continuous improvement. How do you continuously improve? You collect knowledge. You try to collect all the best practices, new suggestions, new process available in the market, which can leverage to increase in our efficiency of our product construction, solution development, or support services as well. So all these things are normally collected as a knowledge base and normally labeled so, but some of the company might have a different way of labeling that document. It can be a possibility, and now that's what is referred as a lessons learned register. It can be as simple as an Excel sheet or a Microsoft Word document, depending upon your organizational policies and procedures, right? And then we have all project management updates as well incorporated in our integration project management plan. And then we also update organizational processes set in the managed project knowledge base.
Ravindraji,
Go ahead, please.
one question is like that, project management is like a continuous process, right? So,
Right.
We have a, daily stand-up meeting in Scrum and all this. So Scrum is again a place where we add our knowledge process, right? On a day-to-day basis.
That's right, sir.
Okay.
See,
so it is built into that.
Yeah, right. See, continuous improvement is like, let me give you a typical, daily life example. Let's say you wake up in the morning, you get your tea prepared, you fill it to your mug or glass, and you drive to your office. Your office commute is like 15 minutes. So you finish your tea, you reach the office. I'm basically explaining my way of US working. So when I was in North America or Europe, I used to do these things. I used to go to office at around 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. I used to wake up. I put the tea kettle on the gas or stove, so that by the time stove and tea gets boiled, I gets freshen up. I wash my hand, face, mouth early morning. I collect that tea. I pour it in my mug with the water, sugar, whatever I want, uh, with ginger and all those things, and I start drinking that thing and start walking to my garage. I take my vehicle. I drive to my office, let's say 10 to 12 minutes. And I keep drinking this tea whenever till I reach my office chair. By the time the tea, might have been finished, but if not, then I still enjoy the tea for an hour or so. And that's the way I do it. So my first most efficient work day is with the ginger tea with my office without anybody disturbing me for the first few hours in our office. That's how I want to work, and that's how I was working. Now, how do I improve these things? I'll decide in the night, do I want a ginger tea? If yes, then I'll put some, ginger root at accessible thing at my fridge. If I want some masala tea, I'll have that masala, packet ready at my, kitchen top, so that I can, dump that powder as early as whenever I might be in a half sleep kind of scenario, and those scenarios. So this way I can improve my life on a daily basis. It's disciplined, yes, but still I can improve because my situation does change on daily basis. In winter, you might like ginger with elaichi, ginger with lemongrass, because all these items, all these masala makes your throat more, free, less of cough, because these are all medicines, right? And we Indian do believe that. I don't know about North American way, but Indian way at least we believe. Means this is what we call grandmother's batwa and all those things, right? So if you really drink a good ginger tea in the morning, the cold won't affect your throat that much. But yes, it helps as a medicine. So this is how you adapt to the scenario, adapt to the situation, and improve your life continuously. Do I drink ginger tea in summer? No, summer is hot, and tea makes you feel hot. So you normally use something like cardamom, elaichi. You might use something like whatever cools you down. You might take curd instead of tea if you feel like that while driving and all, right? Because curd makes your body temperature goes down, or you feel at ease whenever you work in hot climate like India and all. So this is how we adopt, and this is how we basically keep evolving ourselves as a human. That's what the humanity is all about. Forget about the animals and way of animalistic instinct, but these instincts make ourselves more human. So if you keep improving, even the road you choose, you might know you don't have to choose a highway on winter, because it's like heavily clogged with summer and vehicles, slow moving vehicles. So you might choose inner lanes on winters. You might choose the highway on summer because inner lanes might be clogged with all those water spraying tankers in the morning and all. So these things do happen. You adapt to the scenario, and this is how we evolve. Even the Scale Agile methodology is normally released after 15 years of Agile Scrum implementation or Agile Scrum adoption by the industry. And that's how we basically update ourselves. That's how we improve ourselves in terms of project management methodologies as well. And that's what the CMMI level 5 talks about. CMMI is Capability Maturity Model, which is a framework released by Carnegie Mellon in late 1980s, where they have trying to understand organizational maturity framework, or how matured is the organization in terms of their internal policies and procedures. So this CMMI process talks about those things. So whenever you're improving your life, like I told you about a simple process of Ravindra getting out of his bed and reaching to his office chair, this process and how it improves year by year, and this is how we do it. And that's what the humanness is all about. That's how the maturity is all about. Maturity is not about worrying about small things, like okay, car won't start. Like I couldn't find my ginger to put it to my tea, or I couldn't find the grater, right? You grate the ginger root and put it in your tea. But yes, you can use simple that you can crush the ginger and put it into your tea. These things do change, you do evolve as per the scenario on strategic level and tactical level. Strategic level is where I'm thinking of a level where we have many months to think it through, many months to plan it through. Tacticals is you need to plan it immediately within minutes. And these are all the way we differentiate our goals, differentiate our improvements as well. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, Ravindraji.
Thank you. Most welcome, sir. And this is how we should, basically even talk in our interview. Try to be yourself. Try to use your own, daily thought processes to make your life easier, make your life better. Okay? Chalo, thanks. I do talk a lot, so please do stop me if you think I'm boring you. And I'm open for suggestions. So please do keep suggesting if I can improve my, delivery of these lectures and all. Okay, so let's move on. So anybody have any challenge in understanding managed project knowledge?
No, I just have a question.
Please, please.
The project management plan is updated frequently, right? So how, does it need to be approved by somebody, or we have to share the updated project management plan with the stakeholders every day whenever it is updated? How frequently it is done?
That's a really great question, ma'am. And this means that you're actually, taking a full interest in terms of how the things are basically getting
actually practically working. I just wanted to
yeah, I can understand that. I can feel that, frankly speaking. Project management plan is owned by project manager, and project manager is only the approving authority at the end of the day. Now, having said that, in some organizations, there are some bodies like PMOs or relationship or engagement manager or even CEO, CTO, who normally dictates the manager not to share the project management plan without his or her consent. So that makes them approval authority, and then only project manager can release. But in normal scenario, project manager is a leader by himself. He's the author and a reliever of project management plan. These are live documents which are shared on the cloud server nowadays. And this has been happening for the last 5+ years, where if Ravindra is a project manager, he updates the project management plan after the Scrum meet within mostly half an hour or so, and he updates or releases it to the Google Cloud or Rockwell Cloud or AWS, whatever you're using, so that everybody who is read access to the document can read it. Now, includes developers, team members, and everybody who has a read access. Normally, 1 or 2 of the team leads or a project leads might have a write access or a modify access for a given Microsoft project plan, and the document called Integrated Project Management Plan of Enhancing Attendance Management System for a state farm. So Word document and MPP, these two combined makes this project plan in real practical life. Now, as I said, Ravindra Pandey used to publish these things. So whenever we click a button called publish or submit, these things get updated on the cloud and everybody can see at the next instant. This is how it happens normally. But in some organizations, I have seen a CEO, CTO, or a project management office might want to have a look at it, the updated project management plan first, and then release it to the stakeholder. Due to certain constraints, due to certain legalities and all those things, this thing do happen. So this is how normally project management plan is being circulated. So, nowadays, we don't circulate it, we distribute it via central storage. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
And project management plan is a live document. So it's get updated on almost hourly basis, if not daily. Daily update hoga because of Scrum meet, but normally it's get updated on hourly basis, because you might find something like, okay, Ravindra is missing today, so his task might go in pending, or I might change his activity or task to some another shoulder, and his or her task can go into the next daily sprint. So this thing do happen. So whenever or somebody falls sick on an office floor in the afternoon after lunch, this thing do happen. So I update my project management plan, like saying, okay, Keshav is not well today, so he's took half day today, or he had some problem at his family, so he need to rush to his home today. So his task after lunch is normally given to somebody if they are on a high priority. If they are not on high priority, I might push his tasks to the next daily Scrum. So these things do happen. I do update these project management plan as and when such nitty-gritties have been adopted in actual project in actual plan on daily practical life. There are some project manager which I don't suggest you do. They keep these things hide under curtain. They don't release those plans to the cloud. I am totally against it. Let's be transparent. Let's give even others to help you out. And this is how the project manager should work. But again, it's a personality trait. There could be some project manager who really don't want to be everything transparent. So then they normally skip many things in this daily update of project plan process. These things do happen, but I strongly advise against it. Right? Okay. Any confusion? Any things you want to ask more on? This project plan distribution process.
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Let's move on. Oh, good. Any questions? Sorry.
No, I'm good. I said I'm
Okay,
good.
thanks. Chalo, let's move. Monitor and control project work. This is another parallel activity. I keep doing these things. Whatever process I have just explained, it also works with. It's also a part of monitor and control project work. Let's try to understand the output. The work performance report. Now, when I say somebody took a leave because of his health and all, he or she couldn't do his work for half of the day. So overall, his or her performance have been reduced for that day, right? And will be reduced for that complete sprint. Might be 3-day sprint or 2-week sprint. So such performance variations do get matched or do get monitored by Microsoft Project as a tool. Even as an Excel as a tool, we do monitor these work performance. Now, whatever work performance, depending upon your various scenario, gets affected, get monitored, and get logged into the cloud and is normally visible to everybody across the team. And this is how we want to be transparent, even with the client at a greater level. So whenever we say we are adopting to the state legality in terms of distributed work and all these things are clear to the client. Even they can understand the risk factor. They can understand the delays are going to happen due to the state and federal legalization scenario change. So that's why we normally try to be much transparent and much adapted to the situation on the ground and share those with the client as well. Then change request, whatever change request come, we normally channel it through the change control board. But in some scenario, as a human, you might need to change something which come to your plate directly rather than going through the change control board. Normally, these changes are very small or minimal changes, like change the color of the font, change the color or size of the font, and so on and so forth. These type of cosmetic change might take a few minutes of a developer or constructor time. I might adopt on a fly, and this is my decision, my authority as a project manager to accept such scenario to make sure the client is happy. At the end of the day, the client satisfaction does matter a lot. If he or she is satisfied, your payment will process in minutes. If he or she is not satisfied, your payment might get stuck in a travel matter, like yeah, my payment gateway is not working, my MasterCard data services are not up to the speed, and blah 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 things. So you might hear 100 different reasons for not receiving the payments, and these things do happen in a practical life. So that's why there are certain rule bending or liberality given by the project manager to the client, to the some of the stakeholders, because they are in a capacity of steering the whole satisfaction levels of many stakeholders in that scenario. So as a project manager, I might bend couple of rules which are not advisable, but as a human, I might support their challenges or try to resolve their challenges on the ground as well. So these things do happen in real life, and we do adopt to such scenario. Then project management project document updates. So we have cost forecast. Now, as I told you, there are some project financial consultant allocated to a project manager who normally do these cost forecasting, trend analysis for the resource burnout. That's what they say. You don't have to remember these things, but if you can remember, it really helps out in an interview. Resource burnout are basically whatever resource you are utilizing. We normally use it for a 6 hour. If you use the resource for 8 hours a day, it means that you're burning out the resources, or you're using the resource in excess. You are consuming the resource in excess. It can be as simple as a lathe machine, as simple as a human resource. So if you have a look at extra working, PMI or the industry take it as a negative point of a manager. Believe me, this is a real life scenario. A CEO, CTO walking across your team area and office and finding it, there are quite a few number of guys who are working late. is a kind of bad mark on a project manager's performance. And many organizations treat these as a really not efficient project manager in a real world, and such. So the appraisals at the end of the 6 months or a yearly periodic period get affected by such scenarios. I hope you are understanding why I'm trying to share these environmental factors to project manager as well, because this is how the project manager's performance get monitored. And I'll keep discussing throughout the different knowledge area how even project manager, which is a human entity, which try to adapt to a given scenario, normally looked as an inefficient project manager, and we need to normally cover it up for that as well. Okay, so in real practical life, late workings or late comings are looked at as an project manager's loss of control on the project or something like that. So these type of scenario we need to monitor closely. Issue logs, any new issues by the client, any issue within your team has to be monitored and controlled by the project managers. And so it's logged in the issue logs, which can be as simple as a simple Excel sheet or a Word file, or you can have an issue log chapter in your integrated project management plan. This is again depend on the organizational policies and procedures we normally laid up for the complete project methodologies adaptability, right? And then we have lesson learned register, the knowledge project knowledge we are collecting throughout our project, product and solution development. Then of course risk register update if there are any new additional risk which we can perceive. It can be as simple as storm coming our way, heat wave coming your way, or there are forecast of heavy rains and so on and so forth. So all these change in work culture, changing efficiency of a project member has to be notified or has to be included in my project plan. And so the plan is getting affected or updated to tune up to this scenario. And then scheduled forecast. These are basically declared by the project manager in the Microsoft project or a Jira plan. The schedule does it for you. So you don't have to really create a scheduled forecast extensively. We'll see whenever we do a hands-on workshop on Microsoft project, you could clearly understand how the scheduled forecast is being created, is being analyzed by the tool itself rather than you doing anything extra. So if you add any new task or activity, the scheduled forecast does change. Then we have performed integrated change control. Now change is practical part of the real life. We do change every day. We do adapt to the scenario. Similarly, as I discussed a few minutes ago, we do have to adapt to the client request. Many times on maximum time, the change requests come through a change control board. But normally there are scenarios where client wants to get these smaller things done on priority within minutes, within hours. And as a project manager, I normally closely work with product owner and scrum master to decide in adapting such scenario in daily scrum meet. Normally this thing should and must go through the daily scrum meet, but there are some project manager, which is, I believe, not a good practice. Even if a client calls you saying, boss, could you get this thing done, and they get these things done. Normally this disturb the whole daily plan you done in scrum meet. Normally I advise you against it. Whenever somebody calls you, I request him to send these things via email or create an MOM and send back to him, so that whatever he or she said to you as a project manager, or to add to the flexibility, and I'll tell him I can address this thing by tomorrow's scrum meet and we'll get this implemented by tomorrow. This makes sure you also have enough breathing space of analyzing what needs to be done, how much time will it take, means estimate, analyze this thing. You might run this thing through the BA team. It shouldn't contradict with the other requests which we have previously accepted, right? So those scenarios. So there's a policies and procedures to be followed by the project manager human as well. So that's how you should adopt it. But again, it's a personal trait. Even there are some challenging scenario, not easy as we speak. So you have to do it in certain scenario, and that can be a challenge, that can be a exception also. So depending upon the situation, we adopt to the situation. So approved change requests are basically the change requests which came via change control board. The project management updates whatever change requests you have included in your current sprint or plan for the next sprint, the project management plans get updated accordingly. And then project document update, the change log. We have normally special Excel sheet called change log, and these Excel sheets get updated daily. So what all requests we included, even if it's smaller or a bigger request, normally included in the change log, and it's normally associated with the resource with a date or a scheduled start date. And these things do get incrementally updated on almost daily basis after the daily scrum meet, so that whatever changes you have been adopted has been notified and released on the cloud for everybody, every stakeholder to analyze them. And this is a normal process or a transparent process of a given project manager. Does that make sense? Anybody have any challenge in understanding integrated change control board, integrated change control?
No.
Can anybody explain me what you mean by change control board? What do you understand by a change control board? It's a small thing, but this question is normally asked in the interview.
Change control board is the body who is authorized to approve the changes or to analyze the changes and see whether it can be taken or not. It can be accepted or not during the current phase.
Perfect answer. That's really great, man. Thanks a lot. Everybody does understand this.
Yeah.
What is change?
And basically, it's also a committee, right? That they
Yes.
consist basically of subject matter experts and managers, right?
They can be a subject matter, sir, but normally they are change control board. It can be as simple as your, QA manager can be a change control board, or there could be a PMO, means a group of senior manager who is acting as a change control board, because this project solution is very have strategic, importance to the organizations. These things do happen, and there are, number of persons in between. So we normally have a 2-member or 3-member change control team if we have around 20-member project team. And these 2-3 members, there could be one from client, one from the actual project team, and one from sales team as well, sales managers or something like that. So these organizations do play on mix and match of those things. Again, it depends on how many change requests you are getting on a day as well, because somebody has to scrutinize the project objectives against this change request and the older change request contradiction with this change request, as we as ma'am explained, the validity of it, the adaptability of it. So these things do go through this change control board. So understanding change control is really important factor, and ma'am really given you a complete end-to-end definitions whenever we were discussing change control. So change control board is really important factor of a project management team. Many miss these things, believe me. Many project manager ignore this change control board, but change control board can derail your project much earlier than you think. Yes, Sita ma'am, please go ahead.
Yeah, does the product owner has any say in the change control board? Reason being, he is the one prioritizing the product backlog.
Right.
So is he part of the change control board because he is responsible for the final product outcome, right?
Yes, ma'am, you already answered the questions within your questions. He is, because he decides if you can adopt these things or not, right?
Right.
He is the kind of controlling authority who can say, no, whatever requirement you have said and we have approved earlier now has to be scrapped. Under those requirements, we have to scrap. Scrum Master is the chairperson of the Scrum Meet, but still, product owner is a visionary. He has his own reason of not doing those things or not wasting time. This is how they normally say in those real world. So let's not waste time in attend to this 6 requirement now. Let's go ahead with the other priority items. And this how the product manager guide those things. So if he postpones anything in daily Scrum Meet, it means it's gone on a back burner. Now, whenever he puts that thing on priority as a product owner, we have to execute it, because he is the guy who actually pays the check in a real world, and that's how it happens. And that's how we basically get adapted to the scenario. Normally, this is again, as you said, it's an exceptional case, because you're going to the queen or a king to modify your house, something like that. So,
Ravindraji, I would like to add one thing here. So, what it is so when we do have some projects, so there is obviously some change.
Right.
So what they want to do is, let's say, I am pulling data from Zim system
Mhm.
for the project, and then, it is a production system. So a lot of people ask, why do you need access to? So how the change control board now sits and say, okay, can we give access, right? So if that is the access, is it a read-only access, or, you don't want anybody to write because that will affect performance. So
Right.
probably sometimes, it might get postponed, gets into the next Scrum. It's a iterative process. So so the project gets delayed. So I have faced a lot of these situations
Mhm.
where, it gets so, not many product owners and product managers take this into account, and so they will get stuck
So
with
we have
this.
to,
So
sir.
they will
We have
not
to,
allow
sir.
any time for this.
Yes, sir. We have to, because whatever is affects your efficiency can delay the project, right? So in that scenario, we need to make sure either you take an extra resource or some infrastructure guy can write a script of giving you an access of those, zip file or database for certain period of time with a schedule attached to it. So let's say within 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. These are the 3 resources will get access to that zip file or database, and that they can verify what all things they need to verify. And this is how we patch up the whole process. And these details, what I've just shared with you, gets added in a project plan. So the product owner has a look at it and say, okay, yeah. Now this is a modified process and it's really good. Or if he gives you suggestions, rather than that, why don't I email you the copy? I email the copy to these 3 guys rather than shared on a cloud, and they can get it done with it rather than giving access to a server and all those things. These things do happen. And we, even as a product owner, his aim is to get the product developed as early as possible, right? Or get the support as early as possible. So efficiency is on his or her agenda as well. And that's how we adopt to the scenarios. In real life, the things are really went, change fast. In actual, product life or other domains like automotive domain or, other scenario, there can be couple of approval, obstacles. So you might need to get approval from a couple of other guys like PMO and all those things, which might take a day or two. So the adaptability might be easy, but the approval might take time. So these type of changes do happen in a real life. My suggestion would be, please include all such changes in your plan. You might add a statement to it, as simple as that, or you might write a new process update in your plan. And depending upon you as a project manager, how much time you have at your disposal, how efficiently you can depict these things, you can add this or update this document as per the need. Okay, does that solve your confusion, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's really great example. I hope everybody understood what he explained these things. These type of nitty-gritty do make our life easy day by day if you tackle it correctly. But if you kept it on a burner, or kept it at your background, they might haunt you at some day saying, no, we should have done that, and blah 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 things. So we should tackle the bull by its horn. Try to address the scenario at its face value. Then you might decide, no, this is not a really time consuming process. So let discuss this in the evening, discuss this tomorrow, discuss this next Saturday, and all those things. This thing you can postpone, but have it analyzed by yourself as a person. And that's what the artistic nature of project management comes into play. And we normally also improve as a human on day in, day out basis. Okay, any questions on perform integrated change control? Okay, I believe nobody have any questions. So let me move to the another last process group in integrated project knowledge area. It's called close project or phase. Now, there are certain challenging scenario throughout our project life cycle, product life cycle, or support life cycle. We might need to decide that this is not financially viable. Yes, the maximum conditions are not financially viable, or the project or a product objective is irrelevant now, or it's not a need. And these things do happen. Let me take you an example, like a COVID vaccine generated by Pfizer. Pfizer started with around 16 different COVID vaccines generation in last June or July. and they have scrapped almost 12 or 13 out of it. Means they are normally producing around 4 different types of vaccine as of now. The last I know, I have checked it in the last week. These things do happen. So all the 13 or 12 projects are, they're not a failure, but they are closed due to certain strategic alignment, decision done by senior management, and we close that project. And these things do happen. So how do we do these things? Let's try to understand that in detail. The inputs are, of course, the project charter, the basic objective, why we've started this project, and then we try to basically get everything aligned to the project objective, right? Then we have project management plan, all the components, what made this project start, initiate, start construction, and blah, blah things. Here we can refer them all in our project management plan. This is again the integrated project management plan we're talking about, or all the other project management plan, the 9 other project management plan like scope management plan, resource management plan, stakeholder management plan, all the other management plan can be analyzed, and then we can come to a decision of closing or not closing that project, or changing the project, or doing certain major changes. These things do happen. Then we have project documents, the assumption logs. We assume something which is not normally true, and which we have to scrap this project for. Like we discussed about that COVID, the other medicines might not be that effective, or the benchmark which decided by Pfizer might not be current in the current scenario to be developed as a medicine or something like that sort, or basis of estimates. What I assume, the medicine should cure a human in at least 3 days. That's a normal standard. As far as COVID goes, they believe the antibodies should start getting created within your body within as max as 3 days. So you need to test these things, like if the enough antibodies are getting created in the first day, second day, or at least on the third day, and so on and so forth. So like that, the effectivity of a medicine and the estimated related to them are basically a deciding factor in most of the cases for the closure of the project. And then there are change log. There are too many changes, shared by the client. Let's say in case of our recruitment attendance management solution, there are too many HR executives complaining about these too many resources shifting in between offices, how we can track their attendance, and so on and so forth. So we build some additional processes. But these changes which are required to the actual core project objectives, if they are too much, we might scrap the project, because the actual objectives has to be clear, crisp, and less boggy, in the sense it shouldn't get disturbed by other priorities, right? So if it's getting disturbed by other priorities, the project main objective should be changed, or the project should be realigned or restarted, reinitiated, depending on the scenario and policy and decisions made by the top management. We do adapt to the scenario. So there are number of changes to be adopted, should be as minimum as maximum as 25 to 30%. That's a normal standard IT deviation number. And why we call it deviation? Because all these changes make the actual core objective disturbed at a certain place, and so on and so forth, right? So that's why we have these numbers. But this is typically restrictive to the IT companies like Cognizant, Wipro, TCS, Patni, and all those things. So they track this number. In certain other domain, they might not track this. So things might go on for some longer period. Then we have issue logs. If there are too many issues of the products you have started creating, like in terms of attendance management system, the integration of the biometric and the server is not working correctly. There are data loss. There are certain faulty instruments in terms of biometric, or they couldn't really capture the light blue eyes in terms of some iris scanners, and these things do happen in a practical life. So there are too many issues happening after the first proof of concept or first few deliveries. Then we might close down the project due to high cost or high changing scenarios. Then we have lessons learned registers. We do collect all lessons learned in each and every such scenario and try to understand what went wrong, what could have been corrected, and so on and so forth. So for that, we collect this knowledge And this knowledge is available at an organizational level to the client and to the technology partner as well. In our normal scenario, State Farm is my client and Infosys is my technology partner, right? So me as a project manager working at Infosys, leading a project of enhancing attendance management system of a State Farm. In this scenario, so whenever we collect the knowledge, we collect the base learnings and whatnot things we've learned in Excel sheet or a Word document and shared across these teams, these stakeholders, to make sure in case of failures, what are the things went wrong, and we do analyze or we do review the closure as well nowadays, like what went wrong, why it's failed, and so on. So this is how we do it. And then we have milestone list. So how do we plan milestone? Is there anything wrong went in my, planning these milestones, or have we analyzed the progressive collection incorrectly and something like that, sir? So there are many ways we normally analyze such, early closure of a project before it's a failure or a success. There could be a project failure also, but there could be many things other than failure also. So don't ever think. And to me, failure is also a learning. So failure is also an experience to be gained. Unless you fail, you can't succeed. Think about Thomas Alva Edison, Mr. Edison, who created a company called General Electric. As the philosophy says, he failed 1,000+ times before he actually lighting up a light bulb. Believe me, that's a true scenario, not to the number, but philosophically thinking. So I need to first study the first 999 way I'm doing the light bulb, which I shouldn't have. And then at the 1,000th time, or at the 992nd time, I got the light bulb right. And so on and so forth. Then does the number matter? No. The number is basically of the thought process, the efforts you are putting it to get it right. And that's what the lessons learned, that's what the experience collection matters in actual real human life. Okay, then we have project communication. There are projects failed due to communications. The project manager not being transparent enough, and at the end of the month or at the end of 3 or 4 sprint, he comes to a product owner and saying, boss, we have these big problem which I'm facing for last 3 weeks of we couldn't find a skill for that whatever required technology, so we couldn't do it. The product owner might be furious and say, boss, why you was what was stopping you from discussing this with me earlier? And these type of what you can say held up communication can deteriorate the project very bad way or very effectively, believe me. So for that matters, let's be transparent in our communications. We use something called project dissemination, but that's a kind of restrictive communication. In there also, I try to be transparent in the sense I'll discuss each and every challenges coming my way with my reporting authority and with the client engagement manager or a client leader from a client side to understand project knowledge. And I might try to understand his or her view also on almost daily basis. And of course, we have quality control measures, we have quality assurance and quality control. Quality assurance is building some defect prevention activities. Quality control is basically running those test reports which we have created from the functionalities. So every there's a test case against every functionality. So if my State Farm, if I depict a functionality of notifying attendance with iris scanners, then I need to check by myself if the iris scanner is scanning the iris and notifying the server on certain data elements, right? These are kind of test cases, what we call, and they has to be tested within the development team first, and then we can release this product to the actual client. And this is how it normally happens. So quality control also can make and break your project at a given point. Quality reports in the sense of status report, the minutes of meeting, the quality of minutes of meeting, how relevant was the meeting to the actual requirement, objectives, what are the discussed point, action items are being ignored by others. You should have been notified to others, their senior or reporting authorities as well. So those kind of escalation mechanism and all those things also take an active part and active role in overall project success measures. Then of course we have risk register, we have risk report. I don't think I have to explain again why we basically take risk, why we basically notify risk and all those things, right? And then we have business documents like business case, business management plan, what went wrong, where it went wrong, the agreement, the SLA, service level agreement, do we have to pay any fine for closing up this project, and so on and so forth. So all the top management of both the organizations might study it through before closing that project. Then procurement documentation, what have things been invested, how we have to deploy those tools which are procured for the client with the client money. So I might release all those procured items to the client because we have procured that item from the kitty of the project cost, right? So we might release those to the organizations depending upon your discussions, communications, we can decide on that. And of course, the organizational process assets. So what type of policies and procedures the organizations follow whenever you close a project. We have to take into consideration those things. The tools and techniques, of course, we take a help from SME and COEs within our organizations to understand if we are going wrong or if we could have corrected those things, or could we reinitiate this project. Even closing project has an entity of recreating or reinventing the project, restarting the project as well. So sometimes we might restart the project with different environmental variables, different project managers, different project teams with the different tools and techniques as well. So these things do happen. And we take, these discussions with CEO and SME to understand why we need to close a project. Should we, keep the project on? Because creating project helps client as well as engagement partner. So that is a win-win situation. Whenever you're closing a project, that's kind of lose-lose situation. And we need to understand why we are losing these things in life. So we normally discuss it with all subject matter experts and Central of Excellence team so that we shouldn't come across such, lose-lose situation again in our life. And we try to avoid such scenario. We try to address those scenario proactively so that we shouldn't lose, right? And that's how we work in a real human life. And then we have data analysis. We do document analysis, regression analysis, trend analysis, variance analysis. These analysis help us proactively if we need to close a project or what can be corrected for not closing the project or not closing the phase, and so on and so forth, right? And then we do meetings with COE, SME, client, stakeholders, or any external consultant also can be hired many times to address some challenging scenario which we might not learn by ourselves or which even client don't have expertise to. So for new technologies, let's say, for Apple APK definition, I might hire somebody from Apple as a team, as a consultant. There are quite a few, good Apple solution architects or, iPhone solution development architects available in the market, which are normally get leveraged whenever you are porting from one phone, the Android phone to Apple, and they do guide you on hourly basis. They charge you on hourly basis. You can hire them for a couple of hours and they'll guide you throughout your, project challenges, and they might sort quite a few number of project challenges then and there. And that's really help us out for not, closing the project for some small challenges in terms of skill set, in terms of, or addressable challenges for that matters. And then of course the outputs. If the project has to be closed or, the phase has to be closed early or due to any failure, we normally create project documents update, the lessons learned register, why not, the analysis of it, and then final product, service, or result, whatever you have been developed or released have to be shipped to the client. If it's completed and then you close the project, then of course the whatever you develop, construct product goes to the client and they enjoy the product, or they start enjoying the product or using that product as per their need. And we do move into the support or service mode. And then we normally build a final project closure report. And yes, it's a Word document normally where project manager is author, and project manager creates this final project report and distributes among the stakeholders. It can be as simple as a chapter added to the project integration integrated project plan, or it can be a separate Word document called Project Closure Final Report of Enhancing Attendance Management Solution to the State Farm. These things do happen, and that's how we normally label the document. So, and then of course the organizational process assets, how we can do this thing better next time. What are the tools and techniques we learn throughout this project development, and so on and so forth. So this is how we do these things, right? Anybody have any questions in a closed project or phase process group under project integration management knowledge area? Anybody?
No.
You're good, right? Okay, chalo, let's go ahead. Then, so this is where we completed our first knowledge area called project integration management, right? Now let's get started with the next knowledge area, and we'll basically start understanding how this knowledge area differ from one another as well. And in the next session also, I'll review these things. So please don't worry. But let's start discussing these things, right? Now the next knowledge area is project scope management knowledge area. Let's try to understand. Could anybody told me what you mean by scope? Just in real life, means you have to define in terms of project management. What do you mean by a scope?
Like where the boundaries are, how far it can go, what is the length that it can go.
Perfect, perfect. Anybody else?
The finish, what is the finished product, right?
Perfect, great. Anybody else?
The functionalities or the features on a broader level, not the detailed one, but on a broader level, what it should include in terms of features and functionalities. And then basically all the requirements from the clients. It can outline the entire project functionality.
Yeah, Priya ma'am actually given the definition of a project management of a scope. But yes, let's try to understand in depth so that we are in line in terms of doing our scope management. Okay. Scope is normally, as we started discussing, the area which we can view with a clear eye, the length and breadth of our understanding of things to be done, the requirement and functionality what we have validated, right, and which has to be developed for a given solution, product or services, right? This is the scope actually. So it's normally include the process required to ensure the project includes all the work required, the activities to be done, only the work required to complete the project successfully. Now let's try to understand what do you mean by value add. Hello, Abhinav. May I know you, Abhinav? Means somebody.
No, I am unable to having mic problem, so I am trying through the mobile.
Sorry, okay, no problem. So it's your login again, right?
Yeah. It is my son's name, so
I got surprised. Pardon me for that. Okay, so so here what we are trying to understand. Okay, there's some terminology called value add. Now, value add in older days, in 1960s, 70s, the satisfaction is normally done with the length and breadth of this value add, so that if you make your client too happy, he might pay you completely, and something like that. So value add is basically in addition to the scope given to you. So if somebody asks you to build a car for you, what we do, we normally build a car, and you normally give him a couple of freebies like an extra tire or the handle cover or seat covers free of cost if you bought car from me. This is what we call value add. Normally scope exclude all such value add, and we are started thinking about this value add very seriously in late 90s, 80s, and that's why we have added these things in a project management thought process, saying we shouldn't spend time on value add, rather than we normally try to create the scope completely or address the scope completely so that the client will be sufficiently satisfied. Now this important term called sufficiently satisfied talks about whatever you do to complete the project. It's what the scope is all about rather than whatever you do a value add to the client. So value add are normally discouraged nowadays. But sales, as in sales, they normally always encourage you to add value, and they normally always encourage you to be more and more flexible. Even if you're working in Agile Scrum model, there are certain sales manager who normally comes to you with some client requirement to be getting done in next few hours, and these things do happen. As a project manager, I need to stop those things, right? And I need to channel all the change requests to the change control board. In the scope scenario, the validity of a requirement has been validated against the scope also. So whenever I'm building an attendance management system enhancement, should I include the parking management as well or not? This depends, or this has to be clarified to the project manager by the stakeholder and cleared by the change control board as well, so that we can adopt it. Why change control board? Because change control board will go to the client and ask them, hey boss, you want to add these requirements, but these were not already included or was out of scope previously, and which is not really in line or in part and parcel of the whole main project objective. So we might need to charge you extra. And how much we'll charge you? This is the ballpark figure. So you might need to pay 2 million extra for these parking management solution as well. Then client will think, oh, I'm ready to pay 2 million, no problem, no problem. Then they, okay, then, but yeah, now the schedule will be separately prepared by the project manager and will share with you, because this is an additional scope to the given scope. So previously we have to have a scope defined, and then we can decide on additional or subtraction to the scope. So that's why scope management is one of the most important part in a real life as well. With the project management, yes, of course, but in a real life, yes. Because whenever I get up in the morning and I decide with the tea, I need to have a bread and butter also. So in the previous morning, this is how the scopes get added on daily basis. So I need to make sure I'll have bread and butter also ready. The butter should be melted to apply to the bread as well, and so on and so forth. So a simple scope addition can derail your project or can add quite a good amount of schedule to your project management plan as well, and the cost as well, right? Because every schedule adds the resource consumption to the project, and so the cost get added. So every scopes normally relates to a cost and relates to a resource as well. So scope is not just the scope. Scope is basically planning with resource and a cost attached to it. And that's why it basically makes sure there should be some addition to the planning, there should be addition to the cost, there should be addition to the resource management as well. So first, that's why we start with the project scope management. So try to understand scope. Even in a UML diagram, we had a look at that scope, right? The rectangular box. Whatever use case you are doing should be within those rectangular box, so that within the scale. So whatever functionality I need to be addressed for a given project, product, development, support services, it should be included in that scope. Even in my daily Scrum meet, these scope boundaries are normally probed and disturbed. So as a project manager, I have an authority to make sure or mark the requirement, even the validated requirement, as out of scope. And that's what the biggest control you have on a project. So if somebody comes to you, could you please change this label of a screen? If it's in the scope, you can do it. If it can be done in minutes, you might address it in a daily scope list as well, but normally not advisable. But still, you need to validate the scope by yourself. So unless and until you know the scope of your project, product, or services, you're not a project manager. So to be a project manager, you need to understand the scope first. Then only you can think about planning. Then only you can think about applying resources, man, material, machine. Then only you can think about applying the cost to it. Unless and until you know the scope, you know what to do. You don't have your vision clear. It's really difficult to be a project manager. So to me, To PMI and to a standard mature industry, project scope management comes first. Wherever you start explaining your project, the previous project as well, in an interview, please start with the scope. Start with, I was building a enhanced attendance management system. I was building a employee portal, or a job seeker portal. I was building a recruitment portal. I was building a electric car. I was building a fancy car or leisure car. I was building a sport utility vehicle. These are the scope. So scope statement or the project objective statement does matter a lot, where we normally have this statement as a label to your project management plan as well. So whenever I talk about project management plan derived by Infosys for a State Farm, it can be enhancing attendance management solution for State Farm by Infosys. This is actually the actual scope statement or actual project objective label, what we normally devise to. Does that make sense to you? Am I talking in English?
Yeah.
Have we understood the scope and importance of it?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Because if there are any contradiction in thought process, please start debating right now. You should be very crystal clear on scope and its importance. Unless and until you are clear on your scope, let's say, I requested ma'am to create, make a dinner for me, or make a dinner at house. I requested my wife to create, in US we call it assemble. In India we said create a dinner, because we do make a couple of things new at every time. But yes, that's a different of culture and everything. But still, whenever I say I cook the dinner, it means you have to first define a scope. So could we use the leftovers from morning? Yes. Then the scope gets reduced considerably. Then I might need to do a some addition or changes to the current scenario. So I might might create a raita, or I might add some what I can say tadka to my dal and all those things. So I do make certain changes. The scope reduced to 20 to 30% rather than cooking the dinner from scratch. I hope you're understanding me. These real life example make us understand in depth. As an Indian, we have this problem of having a really huge number of entities in dinner or lunch. In North America or developed countries, their dinner or lunch normally have 2 or 3 entities at the max. In India, if you look at the Gujarati thalis, there are some thalis which span around 250 plus entities in dinner and lunch. Have anybody seen such thalis?
Just the
They call
achar.
them Maharaja thalis and I don't know what not.
Just the
Have
achar.
you ever experienced such thalis? Any
And
Gujarati
also-
film among us?
And also the achar and everything.
Come again, sir?
Also the achar.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Achar is a simple, addition, and that can solve many problems. That's true. Even I like achar. But yes, if you look at the challenging scope, and that's what we are trying to understand here. In North America or Europe, the lunch and dinner can be a bread and cheese and some chicken or mutton or whatnot, right? And these 3 entities can complete your dinner or lunch. In India, if you go to a typical household, the typical lunch or dinner, chapati, sabji, curry, chicken, mutton, whatnot. Then you have a raita, you have a rice, you have a dal, and you might have a sweet to supply to it. So normally it starts with at least 6 entities. In North America or Europe, it's 2 or 3 at the max. And they're really happy with that. And they might add some wine, which is readily available in your house. So, that's the difference in between this culture. And that's how the scope for Indian is a different entity altogether. And that's why I take a basically good amount of time in scope definition. And that's why in India, we have really broader definition for a scope. We normally consider value add as also inclusion of a scope most of the time, which we shouldn't. And I believe you will think in line with me what I'm trying to tell you. Does that make sense? Anybody have any contradiction or any confusion in understanding what I'm trying to say here?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. No problem. This is just to make sure, understand the importance of a scope. So let's try to understand. The scope management knowledge area consists of around 6 process groups, and they are into planning and monitoring only. So the scope is being affected by planning and monitoring process group. Let's try to understand one by one. Plan scope management. So you need to plan the scope. You need to define the scope. You need to describe the scope in number of functionalities, functional and non-functional parameters, and the assumptions attached to it, and collect requirements, which is included in a planning process group. And as we work in Agile Scrum methodology, mostly we do keep collecting requirements on daily basis, if not on sprint-wise basis, right? And then we define scope, we define WBS. We're going to create a hands-on workshop in our next session of how do we create the WBS. WBS is work breakdown structure, which is basically started creating a scope, which is a start of creating scope. Might be for a project, might be for a sprint, might be on a daily scrum meet as well. So create WBS is basically creating or breaking down the activities or breaking down the scope to a level where we can plan the executions, plan the activities for a few hours. Normally 3 hours, 4 hours, or max 8 hours. Or in a typical PMI standards, max 6 hours estimated works has to be broken down till that level where each and every entity can be completed in 6 hours. So whenever I'm trying to build an attendance management solution, I might create a WBS saying the tree name as an attendance management solution. There could be 4 or 5 conceptual breakdown structures saying collect requirement. Second one can be procure biometric. Third can be do a proof of concept. 4 can be start allocating cloud space, and so on and so forth. So there could be number of entities. Now whenever I say collect requirements, so these are a kind of business analyst response tree. I might assign couple of business analysts to collect requirement from so many stakeholders, and I plan their work out on the basis of 6 hours a day. And that's what my WBS is all about. Normally we broke down this structure to 3 levels. Some organizations might break down the work to 5th level, where we have almost hourly based estimations done there. So WBS is the first documents we use to start understanding the estimated efforts required by any resource for a given activity, for a given task. And this is basically one of the oldest tool project managers uses even today. If you couldn't understand WBS, it's really a big challenge, believe me. We need to make sure every one of us should understand WBS in depth, and we should do it on almost daily basis. So WBS for a dinner can be just hit up the morning stuff and do a bagar to your dal. So you have dal tadka as a new entity to your dinner. As simple as that. Or do a raita, or get the cucumber grated, add some milk, curd, sugar, salt, and all those things, and get that raita ready for your dinner, so that it supports all less number of vegetables or less number of dal, whatnot, there in your from your morning's leftover or something like that. So this is how we plan our WBS. And then we have validate scope and control scope in monitoring and controlling process group. The scrum meet is all about, the daily scrum meet is all about, daily standing scrum meet is all about validating scope and control scope. Believe me, if you understand this statement, you have understood the scope management. In daily scrum meet, what we do, we prioritize our requirement, we prioritize things to do within that day. So we validate the scope, we control the scope for a day, because I have so many resources who are producing or constructing something, right? So for that, I'll limit the requirement for a day in our daily scrum meet. So I'll validate the scope depending on priority and scenario, and then I control a scope. means the activities and task allocation given to the human resources or the robots and all those things are basically in line with their capacity of delivering the work in a 6 hour span. And this is how I control scope. And that's the whole crux of scope management. Anybody have any confusion at this moment? Let me rephrase these things. And that's why I normally keep this additional slide here. Believe me, scope management is one of the most important thing we do. In every interview, you should be able to explain your scope on your previous project in at least 2 sentences. If more, not more than 5 or 6 sentences, but the scope explanation makes you a project manager or a designer or architect. And that's how we build our seniority in our thought process. So plan scope management, the process creating scope management plan that documents how the project and product or services scope will be defined, validated and controlled. So that object statement, enhancing the attendance management system for a state farm by Infosys, is basically my project object statement as well as a scope statement, or I can say initial scope statement, where I have not clearly defined the limitations, but I got a gist of it. I got a clear view of where, what all can be included and what all can be excluded. Collect requirements. So when I have the scope in my mind clearly defined, then I can start collecting requirement. I can start validating the requirement, managing the stakeholder needs based on this requirement, and requirements that which meet the project main objectives are validated. Even I define a mechanism of scope validation based on the scope objective. And that's how I make sure my project is in line with what are things has to be done for the next couple of days, hours, and so on and so forth. Define scope. Process of developing a detailed description of a project and a product. So we define scope in detaility. How many use cases I need to cover, how many requirements or phases I need to develop to make sure this project is complete, and so on and so forth. Now, the work breakdown structure. Create work breakdown structure. The process of subdividing the project deliverables and project work into smaller and more manageable components. What's manageable? A human resources working for 6 hours is my manageable component, right? So that the task normally shouldn't span over days altogether. The activities shouldn't get planned over days together. So what I'll do, I'll have these manageable components broken down till a level of 6 hours as an estimated work deliverable, right? And then I basically make sure he or she, his efficiency has to be monitored and managed effectively on a daily basis level. And then I validate the scope also. How do I validate the scope? The process of formalizing acceptance of a completed project to the deliverables. So here I include all those things which are in line with the initial project objective. And that's how I validate. Whichever is not in line with the primary project objective, I just leave it there, or I reduce the priority and put it on a back burner. I normally don't say no to anything, but what I do, I normally reduce the priority in such a way that it is not getting included in the nearest possible few sprint, something like that, sir. And then I control the scope. I control the scope this way. The process of monitoring status of a project, product, services, scope, and managing changes to the scope baseline. My scope baseline is the main project objective. Like we discussed, right? The car mileage is normally measured in miles per gallon. Same way, scope baseline is normally measured in the actual basic objectives and actual basic timeline adopted or agreed by the technology partner came from the client. That's the scope baseline. So this is what we basically manage in project scope management processes. Anybody have any confusion till this time? Any question for me at this moment?
No.
Please do read on project scope management. please try to pull out at least couple of hours and try to read out project scope management so that you can understand the actual gist of why we basically use these standardized PMP, PMI processes which are followed across the industry. Okay, I think we should stop here. We are at a logical break point. In next, on next session, we are going to go detail on project scope management, and we'll study detail on each of these 6 knowledge, 6 of these process groups in project scope management knowledge area, right? So if you don't have any questions for me as of now, let me, close today's session, and let's plan to meet day after tomorrow. So we are meeting on, we are meeting on Friday, right? Please note the change. We are not meeting on Saturday. We are meeting on Friday. We will have our session on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Right? Is that a right statement?
Yes.
You
One
mean
question.
every Fridays?
Yes, ma'am. Rather than
okay.
Saturday. Any challenge there?
No.
Okay, because that's a normal way we normally plan these things, but due to my cybersecurity, they had challenge on Saturday, so I need to push them on Friday. So that's why your day have been shifted a day after, and pardon me for that, because that was the adaptability to the older batch. Okay. Yes. Anybody else have any
Yeah,
questions?
one question, Ravindraji, is let us say I want to take, so nowadays, is it better to take a PMP certification or a Scrum certification?
PMP is more valuable, sir. Scrum is just a framework adaptability. When you talk about PMP, it has more broader sense. It's
Correct.
respected all over the globe, plus all over the industry. So PMP is more viable, but yes, you need to put on quite a good amount of efforts there, because as you can see, these guys play around the words, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time. So we need to understand their nomenclature, their words, and if you can go to YouTube and search for PMP exam questions, you'll get a hint of it. It's as simple as just going to the YouTube and search for PMP exam previous questions, and you'll get a quite good number of samples, and you'll understand how challenging is the number playing game there. Believe me.
So is it there are number of levels, or this is just one?
Come again, sir.
Is it like a level 1, level 2, or just one plain test?
They have around 6 different certification.
Six Sigma,
You can start with something like APM, Assistant Project Manager, from PMI. You can go to pmi.org, and you can study all these 6 different certification available at PMP. Otherwise, let's do one thing. In the next session, let me bring that slide up, and we'll discuss how these 6 different layers are there in the PMP certification, and then we'll discuss in depth. Don't worry on that part. Okay? Or you can go to pmi.org and try to understand what are the different type of certification they have, what are the scope of those certification. So that will give you a clear idea.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. And if you have any challenge, I have some slide with me. I might, play in the next session, and we'll understand in depth. Okay. Sure. Any question for me at this moment?
No.
Great. I'll humbly request you to please go through the project scope management. Try to start reading it. Try to understand the objective of scope, because scope is the most important thing which we need to understand from PMI perspective, for any project perspective for that matters. Okay. So let's take up the scope management next time. So we are meeting on Friday, the 8th of October, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. You have a great night.
You
Thank
too,
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thank you. Mhm.
Good night.